everyone is negotiable. One of the big data companies offered us some research and they said it's £120,000 and I said, no, it's not. Came back half an hour later and I said, it's £2,500. No to me means maybe. Rejection's not rejection, it's information.
So Joanna Jensen, fantastic to have you on the Boardroom. Welcome. And I'm really excited to talk to you because I know you've got a fantastic story, a life story, going from one thing to another, and it's all very, very interesting, and it ends up with a children's product which was very, very successful. So I want to hear the story. I'm really looking forward to talking to you.
I am so thrilled to be here, Richard. Thank you.
So Joanna, we've got a few parallels in our career, but you've had a career in finance and in business and writing. So I've done all those things. So tell me what you were doing as a girl and how you ended up getting on your career path that you did.
It is extraordinary, isn't it? When you look back, I've got two sort of 17 and 20-year-old kids now, and them talking about what they want to do. And I look back and I wanted to be a vet or a newsreader. Those were my aspirations. And of course, the world doesn't work like that, really. I think unless you really desperately want to be a doctor, I couldn't do science. So being a vet was a bit of a non-starter. And I ended up leaving school at 18 because I was too all over the place to actually fill in my UCA form, which is now your UCAS form, for university. And I think I was just dead keen to get on in life. I just was, the last 2 years of school were agony. I was just itching to get out there and do stuff.
Well, I think for a lot of people, the last 2 years of school are the hardest they ever work, aren't they? And then it's sort of something. If you do go to uni, the first year of uni for a lot of people is a bit of a slowdown, and there's all the pressure is on while you're at school. But when you said you wanted to be a newsreader or a vet, but you didn't end up doing either then?
Nope. I came to London when I was 18, and I thought I'd get a job for a year and then, travel for a bit and then reapply for university. And I ended up working for a lettings agent in Knightsbridge through Manpower, that used to be the place that you went to get temporary work. And I never left, and I didn't leave for 3 years, I don't think. They offered me a proper job, 10 grand a year, and this ancient Polo jalopy as a company car. And so I stayed. And as it was, all of my mates who had gone to university, they all came out in the late 80s, early 90s and couldn't get jobs. So, and there was I, jobbed up and actually doing something. I never had any aspiration to do it, but I just wanted to do something, and I actually wanted to earn some money. I took everything I did as I'd be the best that I possibly could. And we ended up, you'll remember the housing crisis in the late 80s. We ended up with a whole portfolio of property we had to sell. And it was through that actually I set up my first business, because at that time as well, the currency, the pound, was just really pretty worthless. People weren't buying property. Interest rates were 17, 18%. And a lot of Asian money was coming in and buying property in the UK. And they all wanted to rent these properties out. So I thought, hold on a minute. I kind of understand this market a bit. Why don't I just do them up? And so they can buy these properties, and then I can come in almost with a turnkey solution to fit them out with furniture and necessities that they need to move on. And that's when I set up my first business, age 21, I think I was. And it was an interior business purely for the rental market in London.
So you went from working for a letting agency to, at some point, you decided to go out on your own. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, yeah. So I was showing people around property and knocking up rental agreements. But then I saw this gap in the market, that people were buying, a lot of Asian money was coming into London, buying these properties, and they needed them to be kitted out for rental. And I provided that solution. My grandparents were antiques dealers, so I could get my hands on a load of brown furniture. I like to think that I had a bit of taste, but I knew, having worked 3 years in the rental markets, I knew what rented quickly because it presented itself well, and what didn't rent quickly because it looked a bit tired.
Because I was reading something the other day which was really interesting. It's saying history repeats itself, but on the other hand, every time is different. And in a way, I was in finance in the late 80s, probably, just around about that time, and there was a financial explosion. I was in derivatives with a maths background, but there was no one else who'd done it before because this was all new. And we didn't even have Excel Excel was just coming on. So it was different, and there was opportunities in the market because of that. And it didn't matter you were young. And you were young.
Not at all.
And it didn't matter. And in some ways, the people who have been in it for 20 years might have been at a disadvantage because this is different. You're dealing with Asian customers now, or you're dealing with 17%, 15% interest rates now. It's changed, So maybe you were on the right path, the right curve.
It's a bit like you in your business, and suddenly you get Excel and you learn how to use a spreadsheet. Come forward to now, that's a bit like learning how to use Claude. That's educating yourself in the new technology that's coming along, and people get left behind because we've always done it this way. And I think that's where entrepreneurs come to the fore, because they look at the problem and they just find a solution. They don't care whether it's always been done this way or, we never paint things blue.
Well, half the time I don't even know it used to be done that way.
No, well, this is the thing, and that's the joy about this generation now. I mean, a lot of people will listen to this and think, what's she talking about? Interest rates, 17, 18%. It was absolutely shocking. I mean, you put your money in the bank, you were expecting to get a 10, 12% return on your cash. That seems absolute madness. And people's homes were being repossessed almost on a daily basis. People were literally posting their keys through the letterbox of their homes. We were selling houses. We couldn't sell houses in Belgrave Square for £250,000. We just could not sell these properties.
I ought to have a time machine.
Yeah, I mean, had we known, we would have just gone out like nutters and bought everything. But the mortgage rates were so extraordinarily high. I think I fixed my first mortgage was fixed at 13% for 3 years, and I was literally high-fiving myself because I'd done such a good deal.
You took a rest when you left the day job, but in some ways you'd done an apprenticeship virtually with the 2 years. You'd learned everything on the job working for the letting agency.
Yeah.
And use your own brains and your own family history and your own tastes and everything. But did it feel like a risk when you went out on your own?
Not at all. It didn't. It just felt like a natural thing to do. I think I've got this sort of, and again, I think this is a trait of entrepreneurs, isn't it? You've just got this unbelievable optimism. You just and you believe in yourself, and you think, I can do that. The only thing that really concerned us, I think, was whether we had enough money to pay for the beers. That was about as complicated as it got. And, property prices were a lot less then. I think I bought my first flat for 80 grand. And, and I owned that. Yes, I had a mortgage on it, but I had a mate living with me, and that covered the mortgage. So all I had to be able to be sure that I could do was pay for the Chardonnay.
That's enough. We wish we could go back to that period.
Yes, I thank the Lord that period is now over.
Sometimes it's easier to take a risk when you're young.
And you've got nothing to lose.
Once you've got kids and a mortgage, then your day job is pretty important, and you're putting a lot of people at risk. Whereas if you're 22, you've still got a whole life ahead of you, really.
Yeah. What's the worst that can happen to you is that you have to start again.
And so what happened then?
So then I started doing these tours of Asia, particularly Hong Kong and Singapore, with property companies. And so they would wheel me out as someone who could provide this interior solution for their purchasers. So I hooked myself up to a couple of these real estate agents. And when I was out there, I had a lot of friends living in Hong Kong. And I was out there and I thought, do you know what? It might be quite fun to give this a go and move out to Hong Kong. And I met someone and I thought, oh, yes, why not? I've got nothing to lose. So I actually sold my business, which by that stage we were doing gardens as well. My mother was a gardener. And so we did the whole package. It was absolutely hysterical. And sold my flat, sold the business, moved out to Hong Kong, sitting there reading through my then boyfriend's books and read a book on derivatives trading. And I thought, that doesn't sound too hard.
Oh, thanks. Did you have a maths background?
No, not at all. I mean, honestly, literally 5 fingers, 5 toes on each hand. That was about as good as it got. But I just thought, okay, that can't be too hard. And he was actually
you
derivatives.
on the sales side.
Yeah.
I will defend the
He was a derivatives trader. He was a strategist like you. But I thought, how hard can this be? And I went for an interview with fund managers. And I thought, to just do a really basic job. And then for the next 6 months, I ended up as an analyst on Japanese heavy industrials. Can I just assure you, I never did go into derivatives in one iota. Because whilst the book made it sound really exciting and really simple, the reality is, it's slightly more complicated than that.
Yeah, well,
to give you, I'm going to doff my hat at you to say well done you for doing it, because it was
I've got a
beyond
maths
my
background, but I can't imagine anyone without a maths degree doing it.
No, not at all.
Right.
I mean, I was.
But there's
I was
difference
very
in
silly.
finance between sales. You can
Totally,
sell a product without really understanding the pricing of it. As long
Absolutely.
as I say,
and ironically, years later, I was selling derivative products, but that was another chapter in the journey. And so I started in a very small boutique. It was Wheelock NatWest, if you remember.
Yeah, it's Aussie Bank.
And I was working there for the Japanese fund manager, lovely woman. He was bonkers Irish. We used to go to the swimming pool in the Shangri-La Hotel every lunchtime, Krakatoa. And she and I was basically her analyst. And it was a really good experience for me. But what was so funny when I left Wheelock NatWest was one of the girls was talking to me. She said, "It's just so weird you never responded to any of your emails." And I said, "I got emails?"
Hang on.
And nobody had told me that we had emails.
How could you, business cards? I'll send you an email.
But it wasn't. It was a really early stage of having email.
Right.
And it was, nobody had thought to actually onboard me in any way in that job. I mean, there was no onboarding whatsoever. Here's your desk. Here's a pile of papers. Can you have a look at them and sift through them on the following basis? And, we had fax machines spewing paper all day, all night, all day, all night. So my next job, I would go to WI Carr.
So hang on. So in a way, because it's quite a quick, you've got to pay attention. You're changing career and doing things. So it was a newsreader or a vet, and then you went in and you're doing property, and then you just read a book on derivatives, which I don't know why you suddenly read that, but leave that. You read a book on derivatives, so you thought then you'll go into derivatives, and then and then you somehow got into the Japanese industrial desk or something.
That was a low point. That was a real low point.
Okay. But you sort of, it's like a random walk down wherever, isn't it? A random walk through life.
Yeah. Well, think of it as intellectual curiosity.
Yes, but obviously, you've got, there's something more you obviously have. I mean, I can tell from straight away from talking to you. You're very engaging. You listen very well. You've answered very clearly and precisely. So you've probably got that talent which applies to all industries. People want to engage with you. They like you. They want to take you on, and so you've just been pulled here, pulled there, and what's worked out and what doesn't work out, you just follow that path, I suppose.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I think for me, I've always had this principle. If somebody says, "Can you get something done by the end of the week?" I get it done by the end of the day. If I'm going to do something, I want to do it really, really well, and I want to do it efficiently and thoroughly.
That's great.
And that has been something that has been with me all of my life. I don't do anything half-hearted. And that, years of coaching taught me that we, our attention to detail, the speed, the pace at which we work, the expectations we have from ourselves is very often other people are not able to deliver to that level. And that's something really that comes with age, that you become aware that actually people work at different paces.
Yes, but I think it's not just age. I think there's, I always believe in closing the loop, even if, if someone asks me, if someone asks me to consider something, I'll always go back, and even if it's a no, I think it's better and fairer to close the loop. Just saying, sorry, I've looked at it, I'm not interested, rather than just wait them, rather than ghost.
I was talking to somebody about this.
People. Even people I've never met, they send me a business inquiry or whatever, and if I engage with them, I close it off because I don't think it's fair, even if I've never met them.
And I'm exactly the same. And I was talking to Vivian Wong last night. We were having dinner. And I was saying to her, she said, "Oh, how do you reply to all these people that are asking for?" I just do. I said, I reply to every single one because for that person, it really, really matters.
Yeah. Even if it's a no. Sorry, I'm really busy.
Yes.
I can't do it. At least it's something. And sometimes the other pet hate while we're doing pet hate is when people don't sort of update you on something. They say, "Oh, that'll be ready by Tuesday," and then Tuesday comes and goes. Like, I understand if it's not done, but just let me know on Tuesday afternoon it's not coming.
You're going to go and do a big retailer pitch, and you want to do a run-through on the Friday, and they're not there. And where is the deck, and can we find it? Oh, they're off sick. And you know, but where is it? Can I find it? Hasn't been done. And you know, I always say, I don't care if it's late, but I do care if you don't tell me it's going to be late until it's due.
Manage expectations.
Manage expectations constantly.
It's just efficiency, though, isn't it? And
it
one
is
more
efficiency.
point on efficiency, while we're having good fun with
do
this,
it.
because we're like that, is you know, you have to, if you're, and I think you learn this in investment banking in a way, if you keep 20 people waiting for 5 minutes, that's 100 minutes. You have to multiply the number of people by the amount of time. So even 2 minutes, keeping 20 people late is 40 minutes work time. You know, it's 40 minutes, and it punishes people who try to get there on time. So,
and we were specifically told when I was working for an investment bank here, that is going to, on average, cost you £25,000. Would you throw away £25,000? No. So please don't abuse. I used to say with my guys, when you're trying to negotiate a price on something, please put yourselves in the shoes of the company. And you can do that by thinking, right, my washing machine's broken. I've got someone in to give me a price for a repair. And is that price reasonable or unreasonable? Or is it cheaper for me to get a new machine? That's the way I want you to think. Not just say, oh, well, that's how much it costs. Let's be done with it. Because everyone is negotiable. Everyone. I remember, I think one of the big data companies offered us some research, and they said it's £120,000. And I said, no, it's not. And the kids on the team said, no, it's £120,000. I said, give me the number. They owe me a favour. And I said, came back half an hour later, and I said, it's £2,500. And I said, and I resent that. And they were just literally, and this girl burst into tears. And I said, this is not because you've not done anything wrong. This is because these are like rack rates in a hotel. They're there for negotiation. And there are levers you can pull, which I'm not suggesting you would even know about these, but you know, I used to plead poverty the whole time. We're a small business. We're trying our best. One day we'll be really big and spend lots of money with you. And then at the same time, listen, I can buy it off you now or forget it. We're going to have to go to somewhere else.
So it's kind of twisting fake it till you make it, which is
totally.
Which is kind of looking bigger than you really are
to
looking smaller than you are so you can get a better price.
Totally. I mean, it's just being an absolute chameleon. And that's how the hustle works. And that, when you're running a business, is probably one of the most useful tools you're ever going to have, particularly when you're starting up, you're trying to grow. Every penny counts. It's being savvy about how you spend it. It's knowing what your return on investment is, your ROI. And what upsets me now in this sort of very digital age that we're living in is that how many businesses can be sucked into the world of meta and find themselves spending ridiculous sums of money and never really being aware of their ROI.
Well, I hope this is correct, but you know, I was using Gemini and talking to it about Google Ads, and Gemini, which is Google's AI, said, "Oh, don't use Google Ads." I'm like, I almost wanted to screenshot it and put it on LinkedIn or something So it's because there's not much transparency behind when you sort of do that digital advertising or digital marketing. You know, it's very hard to know. It's
horse trading behind the scenes, and you're not privy to exactly what those deal movements are. And I think anything like that which doesn't have visibility, you need to think really carefully. If you're a scaling business, you're growing at pace, or you're growing, into something else, you have to be really conscious about how you're spending your money, because the game has changed now. You can't sell or exit a business on a brand name, hope, and a prayer. It is all about profitability now and growth. And too often I'm seeing really lovely businesses going into administration because they've spent too much. They've been caught on this flywheel of expenditure, whether that's Google Ads or whether that's Meta or even Amazon. Sometimes you've just got to stop and see what happens naturally. And I think it's driven by fear, because if they're not spending the money, it's all going to dry up. But it's just not. That's simply not true.
Yeah, well, I agree with that 100%, because I like to say that most small businesses have a high failure rate, and 9 out of 10 is a sort of accepted number. But small businesses go broke because they run out of money. Right?
Yeah.
I know it sounds, but actually it's an axiomatic, like, it's a self-truth. But it's when they run out of money. They run out of money too early.
Yes.
And I like to say it's like they haven't tested the product. So, it's a research project. Does my widget sell? Can it sell? And you end up they run out of money before they find out the answer. And it's so frustrating because if it's research, spend the minimum amount of money to find out if people actually want that. That's all it's not actually.
That's all you need to do. And you don't even have to spend the money. You can go to one of the BIP centres at the British Library where they have Mintel, Euromonitor. They spend all this money for you. And this is proprietary research, so you're not going to see this on an AI search. So if you go on and you do an AI search, you're only going to see a widget of what's available out there, because the really meaty, important stuff is behind a firewall.
So run that by me again. What do you do?
So the BIPC, which is the Business and IP Centre, which I think there are now 23 hubs around the UK. I am a British Library ambassador, BIPC ambassador, because it is so helpful. They buy every single piece of generic research on a sector. So, for example, in my case, children's toiletries, personal care, anything related to multiple sectors, and they cover absolutely everything. You are able to access them either through the hubs or not at the moment because they had a cyber attack, but in a couple of months online as well. They've got every single business book you could possibly want to read. They have every single journal regarding every single business sector you've probably never even heard of. There is so much data available to you. They've got people they do IP, so intellectual property clinics every week. You can learn so much about your consumer, your business, that whole area for nothing, just by using these BIP centres at British libraries across the UK.
That's fantastic. To go back to continuing joining your dots.
Yeah.
So we're now you have left banking.
So I'm still in banking in Hong Kong, and then I wanted to go back to the UK. So I did about another 2-3 years with WI Carr. I then moved back to London. I got a job when actually I was in Hong Kong to move back to, worked for the French again, Paribas as it was there. I think I was there for about 3 years, 4 years.
In finance?
In finance again. Then I did a very short stint at Lehman Brothers. Really didn't enjoy it. I think I did 3 months. Really didn't enjoy it there. And then I went to work for a Swiss bank, which was Swiss Bank at the time, and eventually became UBS.
On the sales side?
On the sales side, yeah.
On what products?
In equities. So okay. I did, and what I ended up doing was looking after the big fund managers in Scotland, so the Standard Lives of this world, Aegon, which is not Aegon anymore, Britannic, and I would try to facilitate whatever their equity needs were across the board.
Were you doing analysis or?
No, I was just shaking a lot of hands and having a lot of dinners.
And all
yes,
yeah. I mean,
it was all of that.
Again, I was, the quant guy stuck at the desk, and
I know.
they'd all come back drunk after lunch, and they're like, I'll be there with a pen and paper.
I would be doing all sorts of. I remember we did get a memo saying we weren't spending enough on wine, and I just said I'm going to take the same and frame this. This is just madness, and it was. We'd go to the Opera House every 5 minutes. I remember having dinner in the Opera House and was watching Luciano Pavarotti on stage, and then our dinner was in the basement of the Opera House in the Pavarotti room, and literally as he fainted doing Tosca, he died when he was Tosca, his beads of sweat were sprinkling me in the front row, and I thought, this is nuts. This is truly nuts. I mean, I had a huge passion for opera and music generally. But, that was, I got to do that because of my job.
Yes. So it sounds like you had fun. So, and then you're back in London, you're at one of the Swiss banks, and then you left finance?
And then I left finance because I had a baby. And once I had and I was 38 when I had Mimi, my eldest, who's 20 now. And I didn't want to go back. I wanted to be there for her. When we were little, Mum was on her own, and we never saw her because she was always working. And I didn't want to do that to my girls. So very clearly, just wanted to be a mum for a bit. So I'd put in a shift, and I had decided, I'm going to leave. I'm not going to go back. I am going to be a mum, and I'm going to find something else to do.
So you
because
left your
I
job.
wanted to carry on working. I left my job, and I wanted to carry on working, but not working in the city. I didn't want to commute. I didn't want to live in London anymore. I wanted to live. By this stage, I was living pretty much full time in Wiltshire, and that's where both our girls were born. And I was, go back to the very beginning. I wanted to work outside. I wanted to live outside. I've had horses, and I've always had horses, and it was a really important part of my life. And I wanted a breather, and I was really, as you say, taking a sabbatical. And to get the kids going, I was very lucky. I managed to have children because there were many complications, and I never thought I could have children. And then, hey presto, these little dynamos popped out one after the other. And it was when I had them that I was itching to do something else. And it was also when I had them that my marriage started falling apart. And my then husband lost his job in the 2008 banking crisis. We didn't have provision. We'd bought ourselves a lovely big glossy house and it hadn't, the Swiss bank shares that should have been sold to pay for it were not sold at the time they should have been. And so we found ourselves in a deficit. He was jobless and things were a little bit tricky. And that, I think, those circumstances is what defines us as people, and whether we're fighters or victims, I suppose. And I said, right, well, we've got a lovely big house with a lovely big barn. I'm going to start doing upmarket B&B and weddings. And I did. In my first year, we turned over 60 grand.
You are a natural entrepreneur, aren't you? You
just
look
can't.
around, what can I do?
I know, I'm a fidget. I think I'm a complete fidget. Or as my mother used to call us when we were children, fidget knickers. So yeah, and I just thought, we need the money. We need the money. I've got to do something. And it meant that we could pay the utility bills, which I thought was, I was doing my bit. Of course, all my girlfriends hated me because all their husbands were turning around and saying, what are you doing all day? Look at Joanna. Blimey, she's changing sheets. She's making breakfast. She just had, 200 people in her barn for a wedding, and she just basically moved out of her house and rented her own bedroom out. So it was sort of, I became unpopular for a bit. But it was when I was doing that and I realised that our marriage really wasn't going to work, that I knew that I was going to have to do something that could support me and the girls. And that was when really the idea of starting my own business rooted itself in my mind. And of course, my youngest daughter, Bella, had really, really bad eczema. And when I'd taken her to go and see the GP, and I was told to use the things that I had been given when I was a child in the 70s.
So no movement in the technology or the
No movement
medicines.
at all. It was, either steroid cream or oil slick emollients that would sit on the top of your bath and smell like old grannies. And I thought, we've got to be able to do better than that. And that was the inspiration for Child's Farm.
So it was a business born out, and I've had a few on the podcast, the Boardroom podcast, of necessity leading to a business. They say necessity is the mother of invention, and necessity is also the mother of businesses sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's a great way or reason to start a business with your own demand, if you understand the demand.
Interestingly enough, Buy Women Built, which is a sort of female consumer brand collective, they did some research, and I think it was 2,800 women who founded consumer brands. 90% of them founded them for a personal need. So it really is absolutely what you say. We need something, and we go out and create it.
But how did you know of sort of secret formulas or secret plants or something?
Well, because I had eczema as a child, and I always have had really sensitive skin. Every country I went to, and with investment banking, you travel all over the world. My first port of call would be go to a local pharmacy, because I wanted to find out what they had that could maybe help me with my poorly skin. And it was by doing that I just got more and more interested. And in a moment when I was pregnant with Mimi, I thought I would do a degree in natural medicine. because I thought, how hard is it to have a baby? And I thought, yeah. And I
While
thought
you're running a B&B business and doing weddings.
Yeah. I mean, I was free between 1 and 3 a.m. most nights. And but actually things overtook themselves. And because I'd used a lot of products and I was really interested in formulations, I had a bit of a head start, but I was no chemist. And I started making my own concoctions, and I realised I could make something that Bella didn't find uncomfortable on her skin. And I asked a lot of people, does anybody know anyone who works with a cosmetic company? And it was just by asking lots of people, I was introduced to Sarah, who then introduced me to the manufacturer who worked for Child's Farm from the beginning to when I left, who were based down in Kent. And that was a revelation. And me being me, I didn't go down and meet Tom. We met on the Little Chef close to my house, which had just been done up by Heston Blumenthal. Mm-hmm. And we went and met for a cappuccino. I turned up in a farm truck. He turned up in a chauffeur-driven Bentley. Okay. It was two poles apart. And as luck would have it, he'd been down looking at a children's brand in Bournemouth. And he sort of, because he wanted to do something to do with kids, but, that wasn't the one for him. And then he saw me and I gave him, the brief. I gave him some examples of what they were going to look like. And he said, yeah, I can help you. And I worked with their team who were brilliant. And some of the things they questioned, but they really understood that I was looking for naturally derived, and using essential oils that made these things not smell of old grannies, but made them smell fun and exciting. So those people that were using them, so kids with poorly skin, didn't feel that they were being pointed out as being a physical pariah. Mm. And that's why we had really fun, bright, colourful labels. The labels, when we ran the business, were all of my kids and their pets. And Child's Farm was named after our farm. That's where we were living. And it was originally called Child's Farm when it had been built 400 years before.
Oh, so does it mean child, as in children?
So the family were called, their surname was Childs.
Oh, okay. So it's a lucky play on words.
So it's a lucky, and the people, well, just as well, they were the first family, because the second family were called Bunny. So it was called Bunny's Farm, which I don't think would have quite worked so well.
No, I don't know if I'd want to rub that on my face.
No.
But, now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I know some people struggle with eczema, and it's quite a range, isn't it? You can have mild
Definitely,
suffering
yeah.
or quite bad sufferers. Is it effective, for people who really are struggling?
It for people who, I would say, our formulation, the formulations have now changed. I sold the business 4 years ago, and so things have changed. But most definitely our formulations, we found, I think 90% of people who had eczema-prone skin found it created a benefit to their skin in many ways, to their skin and also to their psychology. Because there's nothing worse. If you're a little one and you've got really eczema-prone hands and you're at school and you've got to hold hands with your friend and your friend goes, oh my God, what's wrong with your hand? That's hugely damaging. And likewise, one of our users hadn't worn a skirt for 20 years because she was so embarrassed about the eczema on her legs. And she just sent us a photograph of her with her pins out saying this is the first time in 20 years.
Oh, it's those stories that make it worthwhile.
And absolutely. And it was, back in that time we had an answer machine in the office. And I would listen to it in the mornings and just tears rolling down my face as people would leave these stories. We were sent postcards, pictures, letters, and we pinned them up all the way around the office so we could remind everyone what part they were playing in changing people's lives.
So it's still a good product. It's a good product.
It's still a good product.
And you brought it out, but, how do you get on the shelves? How do you get it out there?
Well, you see, I knew nothing about this. Having come from my banking background, I didn't have a clue about FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, didn't even know what it stood for. And I thought you literally turned up at Waitrose and you said, ta-da, here we go, here's all my lovely, wonderful products. Can you put them on the shelf? It was a very, very, very steep learning curve for me. But I'm as bold as brass, and no to me means maybe. Rejection's not rejection, it's information. And I was persistent, dogged, annoying, irritating, and I would really chat up the receptionists at Waitrose head office, Boots head office, find out who was who, bring them presents, bring them chocolates, bring them flowers.
Bribery.
Yes, there is a theme running through all of this. And they really helped to get us to the right people. Now, even when that door is opened, it doesn't mean it's going to be a success.
But it's a foot in the door.
It's a foot in the door, and then it all really does boil down to you.
So be nice to the receptionist. It's a good tip.
Be nice to the receptionist, always. And, when... before Facebook was monetized and people used it, it was the natural progression from friends reunited.
Yes.
And before it was monetized, there was a lovely lady actually in Nottingham called Paige Sweeney, and she posted a picture of her daughter's hands before and after using our moisturizer, and the difference was profound. And that, over 3 months, was shared 65,000 times. And she was told about Child's Farm by the receptionist at Boots.
Wow.
So you don't underestimate. I mean, I used to do crackers things. I would have little samples in the back of my car. I remember driving past Barnes Pond, and I stopped the car. There was a mother with 3 children. I leapt out and gave her a load of samples and a form and said, please try them and then let me know how you get on. And that's, the shameless desire to succeed in what you're doing. But when you believe in it 100%, when I had seen on my own daughter the change and her friends and her ability, she had her first bubble bath age 3 because her skin wasn't irritated. And, her famous words were, it's not owie, mummy. That to me meant I could help other people with their kids' poorly skin.
So that's a fantastic story and fantastic God knows how many thousands of kids and parents you've helped out there. So you've written 2 books, published 1 book, another one coming.
Yeah.
What's the sort of summary, takeaways from the books that you're prepared to share?
Well, I always say that I can share in a 6-minute read what took me 6 months to learn. And, this is my giving back to the entrepreneurs of Britain and further afield. But this is all about the steps that you need to take from idea to creation to prototype to setting up your website to all the legal knowledge that you need to know. So the first book is how to build a winning brand, making business child's play. And then the second book, which is coming out in January, is how to scale. And in that book, I've got a lot of my mates who've been very successful in retail, sharing their stories about their Amazon experience, their Meta experience, bricks and mortar experience, to really give entrepreneurs in Britain, those that are thinking about starting something up and those that have already started, a real helping hand to all the things that you need to look out for. And in the back of both of the books, you've got my little black book, which is all my names and addresses that I found really, really useful over time.
You've got that on your website too, haven't you?
I do have it on my website too, which we put on the other day. And I just want to share the information. There's it's just there for everyone. I mean, you don't make any money out of writing a book. You just give yourself a headache.
Yeah, good on you. Well, Joanna, that's been fantastic. I'm sure there's so much for the viewers to take away on that. That's really great. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for coming on The Boardroom.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers, Joanna.